Hello everybody. Today I am going to be talking about 10 books that I am so excited to read, but that I bet you haven't heard of. And that might be for many reasons. Maybe it's in a genre you don't read much of. Maybe it's old and so it's not relevant anymore. Or maybe it just didn't have a good marketing budget. For whatever reason, I'm really excited about these books, and I feel like they give such a good picture of what I'm in the mood for right now, this very obscure little pile. Maybe it's just the hipster within that's like, let me share some titles you haven't heard of yet. Speaking of finding new book recommendations, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a book subscription service whose mission is to promote new and emerging writers and to help you pick cool books to read. Every month, the Book of the Month team goes through hundreds of titles and picks out 5 interesting and unique stories to present to its subscribers. As a subscriber, you then get to pick one of those 5 books and receive a beautiful hardcover book for only $15. And the best part is that if for whatever reason you're just not vibing with the books that month, you can always skip a month and you won't be charged. $15 for a hardcover is already an insane deal, but you can get your first month for $10 if you use my code, which is down in the description below. This month they have 5 really interesting picks. The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave, Ariadne by Jennifer Saint, Things We Lost to the Water by Eric Nguyen, How Lucky by Will Leitch, and Imposter Syndrome by Kathy Wang. If you're intrigued, check out Book of the Month down below and use my code to get that discount. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Let's now jump in. I want to start with the fiction because I feel like that's what the people care about the most. So the first 2 books feel like they have a connection to me, but they actually have nothing in common. I realized it was just that I bought them at the same time. So the first one is Indelicacy by Amina Cain. I have actually read, the first 1/8 of this book, so that doesn't mean much, but I have read the first 1/8 of this book, and I was so enjoying it, and I cannot wait to finish it soon. This is the story of a woman who is a cleaning lady at an art museum. And she wishes she was on the other side, Why is she the one cleaning the art when she could be the one that just gets to enjoy her life and gets to look at the art or buy the art? So she sort of cons her way into it by marrying a rich man. But of course, things do not go as planned. And she realizes that life on the other side is full of problems too. I love the cover. I love the concept. It's only 150 pages. The next one is Crudo by Olivia Laing. And before I filmed this video, I tried to find a synopsis and I couldn't. And I think it's one of these literary fiction novels that doesn't really have a plot. It's more just a character study, a slice of life, a little moment and a glimpse into a person's life. We have Kathy, who gets married, and she's 40 years old, so she's lived most of her life unmarried, and now she's coming to terms, like, what is it to be married and to live a life? But at the same time, it's about Brexit, and it's about Trump, and it's about Twitter, and the social media aspect is what really brought me to this novel. It's how I found this novel, because I was looking about, thoughtful books, novels about social media, and this came up. And my God, is it beautiful. And look at that. The New York Times thinks it's a notable book. The next one I found at a bookshop, and I hadn't heard of. The Ghost in the House by Sara O'Leary. I was excited to see that the author's Canadian, but also excited to see that it's like a proper ghost story. It's about a woman who is dead, and she realizes she died, and she, I guess, is figuring out, what happened to her, but is also kind of coming to terms with her death. She's a ghost stuck in her own house. In some ways, I feel like we've all heard ghost stories, but I was like, actually, I feel like ghosts are more common in movies in modern times rather than in books. I don't come across many ghost stories, proper ghost stories. And the fact that the main character is the ghost, and at the beginning she doesn't know she's dead, and she's just kind of like, "Why? What's going on? There's something weird going on today." And then she realizes. It's so spooky. It's also short. And Canadian. Okay, this next one, wow. I really want to read it soon. It is The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. So, I've become obsessed with Anne of Green Gables, which... I'm late to the train. I binged watched Anne with an E. I guess it was last year, 2 years ago. Time, what is it? I don't know. But I also read the Anne of Green Gables adaptation by Brenna Thummler. I looked over there. It's too high for me to reach it. Fine. This one. I'm obsessed with this. Please read this. You must read this. It is so deeply beautiful. And like, if you're Canadian, you don't go through life without Anne, all right? It's in the DNA. There's this very famous 1980s adaptation that's just kind of part of being Canadian. And then there's the animated show that we all watched. So I'm very familiar with Anne of Green Gables and, very much know of Lucy Maud Montgomery, but didn't realize she had such a backlist. She has all of these other interesting novels that she's written. And it's one of those classic cases where you're like, listen, if you love 1984 and you love Animal Farm, maybe you would like the other George Orwell books that people just don't really talk about that often. Like Keep the Aspidistra Flying. Check it out, it's really good. This is a book about a 29-year-old, so that's cool. Because, obviously I love the story of Anne, but I'm also like, oh, I wish I could have this much nuance and interest about a Canadian character from the whatever period. What period is she from? I want to say like mid to late 1800s, because there's that whole plot with a light bulb, so there is electricity on its way. Regardless, it's fun to read about a young girl, but it would be so much more exciting for me to get to read about someone who's close to my age. Hate to admit it, I'm turning 27 this year. Oh my god. Lucy, I need you to help me make sense of being the age that I am. And so to hear that she had a book about a 29-year-old was so exciting. And if you've read Persuasion, like the concept, or Pride and Prejudice, you've got Charlotte. The concept of a woman who's in her late 20s, is unmarried, doesn't have children, is just completely useless in that time period. You have this character, Valency, which is such a beautiful name, who is in that position. She's 29. She's unmarried. She's never been in love. And she kind of just spends her life reading romance novels. Well, one day she receives a letter. How exciting is that? I don't know what's in the letter, but it changes everything. So this sounds phenomenal. I hope to read it soon. The next one, the final novel, is Year of Wonders by Geraldine Brooks. So when the pandemic started, I found great comfort in reading stories about the pandemic. And if you're not that person, don't read this book. If, reading about the pandemic is going to stress you out, read something else. Read one of the other 9 books I'm talking about. But if you're like me and you find that reading books about the pandemic helps you process it and think about it and gain context, maybe this is one that you might be interested in. So this is set in 1666 during the Great Plague. The main character is Anna Frith. Frith? Never heard that. She's a housemaid that becomes an unlikely heroine and healer. It says that her village decides to try this kind of controversial idea and go under a quarantine. And that she travels to London, and there's all sorts of shenanigans. I found myself really attracted to this book because I thought it would be really interesting to read about the history of plague. Even though this is, a novel. Plague, pandemics have been a part of human history for as long as there have been humans. So I thought it would be cool to kind of step out a little bit of our modern day version of what a pandemic is. I think this sounds so good, and, it says national bestseller. Next. A book that is by a very famous author, but that I never hear anyone talking about. Homesick for Another World by Miss Ottessa Moshfegh. I love My Year of Rest and Relaxation, okay? I talk about it all the time. If you listen to my podcast, I talk about it too much. This is her collection of stories. I'm obsessed with this cover. utterly obsessed. Guys, look at this dust jacket. I mean, this hardcover under the dust jacket. But also, look at this victory. I found this book at a used bookstore for literally $6. That's the kind of victory you just don't get over. But anyways, I read the first story in this collection the other day, and it is eerily similar to My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Like, it kind of felt like a prototype to what that novel would become. And it has all of the same wit and sarcasm and weirdness that novel had. So I can't wait to read this collection. And again, this is one of those situations where it's just, oh my god, I realized I started changing things. These books should go over here. My god. It's one of those things where you like an author, but then sometimes you don't go back and read their backlist. You just wait for their next book. That's dumb. So here I am, trying to go back. Oh, this next one is so beautiful. Oh, it's so beautiful. So this is Ye, or Yay, I'm not sure, because I've never heard anyone talk about this book, by Guilherme Petreca. This I saw in a shop, and I thought, like, this looks like a movie animation style that I would love to watch. Our main character, Yi, has lost his voice and believes that it was stolen by the Colorless King. Love that name for a villain. And so he goes on this big pirate sea quest adventure to try and get his voice back. I think it looks so beautiful. I cannot wait to read it. You know what? I'm gonna read this one soon. I am. I totally understand why people don't read graphic novels as often or as popularly as they read novels and stuff. Partly because they're expensive and partly because you read them so quickly, and it's just like you have to jive not only with the story but also with the art style. But give some graphic novels a shot. You will enjoy them. Just loan them from your library so you don't have to pay for them. Or buy them and support the author. This next one is Fran Lebowitz Reader. So this is 2 of her books in one. I watched her new show on Netflix, Pretend It's a City, and I loved it. I had never known about Fran Lebowitz. I knew nothing about her, but for whatever reason, Netflix got me, and I clicked on it, and I started watching it, and I blazed through it. Absolutely really enjoyed it. And so I went to look, well, I want to read one of her books. Let me find it. And this is what Canada had. Canada had this bind up of her 2 books. The first one is Metropolitan Life. The second one is called Social Studies. And they're these very short, I mean, most of them seem very short, essays, super sarcastic, super funny, irreverent. That's kind of seems to be her vibe. The Washington Post says, the funniest woman in America. When I pick this up from the mail, whenever I get books in the mail, I will like sit in my car and tear them open because I'm just too excited to wait to get home. Opened this one up, was so excited, ended up flipping to the last one. I don't know why. And I read the final essay and I loved it. So I think I'm gonna really enjoy this. Okay, the last 2 books I need to talk about are so Ariel. I can't even handle it. The first one is Orphic Paris by Henri, which is all about Paris, but I actually bought in Greece. This book combines autobiography, diary, essay, and poetry with photographs to create a memoir. I miss Paris so much, and I know I've been so lucky with the pandemic, and so this is a complete first world problem, but I just want to go to Paris. I was supposed to go to Paris at the beginning of the pandemic, clearly canceled my trip, and have been just thinking about it every single day since, wishing I could go. I just want to go to bookshops in Paris and walk along the Seine and eat croissants and spaghetti. Spaghetti has nothing to do with Paris, but I just find that when I'm in Paris, I eat a lot of spaghetti. So this book might help me. It might kill me. Like maybe it will make me miss it even more, but maybe it will just kind of tide me over while I wait for one day to be vaccinated and then get to travel again. But then the last book is, I think it was written for me. Finding George Orwell in Burma by Emma Larkin. This book is from 2004. Emma Larkin is a pseudonym, apparently, it says in the back here, for an American journalist who was born and raised in Asia and lives in Bangkok and writes mainly about Asia. But this book is her traveling around Burma and using George Orwell's books as a guide. because George Orwell wrote a lot about Burma, had a lot of connections to Burma, and so she both is like visiting the places he mentions in those books and talking about what she sees, but also making observations about the country and relating them back to the stuff Orwell has written about. It's so niche. I can't believe someone decided to publish this. I love that someone decided to publish this and somebody decided to. This is like I am a Larkin. This is the kind of book I need to write someday. I am obsessed with the concept of this book. I have to read this soon. So, these are the books that I am very excited to read, hopefully soon. I really hope that maybe I introduced you to a new book. Please down below in the comments, let me know of a book you've picked up recently you're excited to read, but that you haven't really heard many people talking about, or a book you have read and really love and wish more people knew about. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Check them out at the link down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.